All right, welcome back to Getting Past the Premium, everybody. We've got a world traveler with me today, Tim Leman from CEO of Gibson, who we were just having a conversation, just got back from Antarctica, or you recently were in Antarctica, right?
Yeah, yeah. It was
Which is
we took
crazy.
a family trip there, Elliot, and it was I didn't have a lot of expectations going into it, but coming out of it, I mean, it was just an incredible experience.
And you did jump in the ocean in 30-degree water, which is wild.
Yeah, I haven't gotten one of those tubs at home to do the cold soaks. I
Yeah.
figured I'm going to go all the way there and just, get in the biggest cold tub I could find. So I figured the South Ocean would do the trick.
I think so. Yeah, I think so. I can only imagine how that felt. So if anybody hasn't seen it on LinkedIn, they need to check out the video. But hey, thanks for joining me today, Tim. I'm excited for this conversation. I'm sure a lot of people do know who you are or know of your firm, but if you wouldn't mind giving everybody the overview of Gibson and then your background, how you guys kind of got to where you're at today, I think we can connect the dots for people.
Sounds great. Well, Elliot, I really appreciate you having me on and also doing a show like this. We run a podcast as well, and I know the work and everything that goes into it. So it's fun to be a guest. And I guess I'll give a little shout out to our mutual friend Larry Linney too
Yeah.
for connecting us over the years. I know a lot of good people on your team and my team are in some sessions at Insight and all
Oh
that,
yeah.
and have a lot of respect for what you and your family have built.
Appreciate
So
that.
Gibson, I know you guys are pushing close to 120 years. So I guess we're young compared to you, but 90 plus year old organization. And we had two generations of Gibson family. And then from there, really started kind of being partner led, and the Gibson family sold its interest back fully back by maybe around year 2000
Okay.
to a lot of the senior partners. I joined in late 2005. I'm our fourth CEO over those 90 years,
Wow.
and really appreciative that I know my predecessor, a guy named Greg Downs, and also Dave Gibson, both are in their 80s. Great guys, still care a ton about everything going on. And you might appreciate this, Dave will be driving by some plant in northern Indiana, and we still have him in the email system and everything. And I'll get some sort of email saying, "Hey, is anybody calling on ABC Manufacturing?" I counted 67 cars in the parking lot, and that's second shift, so it's got to be big enough to,
Yeah.
to
I
call
love
on.
it.
So
He's still in the
yeah,
game. I
still
love
in the
it.
game, still in the game. And then we just recently named one of our younger principals, Dave Walters, president. And it's really, and maybe you've interacted with Dave over the years a little bit too, but it's part of what I think Gibson's done a really good job at. And I was given a really good blueprint by Dave and Greg, and that's around succession to keep this
Yeah.
thing going. We're employee owned, so we have an ESOP that owns a little over a third of Gibson. So all of our employees get gifted ownership in that. And then
Hmm.
the other two-thirds is owned directly by, let's see, we just brought on three new shareholders, one. So I think we're up to 27, and that
Wow.
various degrees of ownership and everything. And I have some friends, YPO friends, and others that are always like, "Oh my gosh, Layman, is that like herding cats?" And it's really not. We tend to be pretty aligned. We have some spirited debates and all that, but we tend to be pretty aligned and with everything we're doing. And it's been a big part of who we are. So since a lot of your listeners, I think, are insurance agency people, I'll give some of the back of the baseball card
Yeah.
stats. We are just about $45 million in revenue and about 50% commercial risk management and commercial property and casualty, et cetera. About 40% employee benefits, and then about 10% more affluent personal auto and homeowners
Hmm.
business on that. So pretty blended that way. We've
Yeah, that's
had
a good
a
mix.
long presence in the Midwest. So started in northern Indiana and South Bend, and don't know when this will be released, but there was the people in South Bend are pretty happy last
Yeah.
night.
No
Penn
kidding.
State Notre Dame game worked out well,
No
and
kidding. Yeah, this will be good timing. Probably be released at or around the actual national championship game. So it'll be interesting. We'll
Okay,
see.
so fingers crossed on that. It's
Hmm.
cool seeing how the season ultimately evolved on that. We've had a lot of manufacturing clients for years. So, going back to Dave Gibson in the early 1980s, Elliot, we added a safety, loss control engineer on.
Yeah.
And back at our size, and we were, I don't know, we were probably $5 or $6 million of revenue, maybe. That
Hmm.
was a really unique thing to do. And, but, we had all these manufacturing clients. So workers' comp was so important. And so we've grown that a lot and then gotten involved with a lot of other specialties over the years. And then I'm sure we'll talk about some, so I'll save it. But really, on a implemented a new vision a couple of years ago, and that's been really exciting. I've been able to be involved with that. Quick background, just sometimes people ask that.
Hmm.
I've been doing this for 27 years. I'm one of those strange people though that I have a degree in insurance and risk management.
Really?
So yeah,
It wasn't even available when at the school I
I
went to.
know it was crazy. And this might sound traditional, but it actually made me not want to do it. My old man is let's see, just turned 82, and he's still schlepping life insurance in Fort Wayne, Indiana. And
There you
so
go.
I ended up going to Indiana State. I got an academic scholarship there. Most people know of Larry Bird, and that's about it. And I didn't want anything to do with insurance. And they had started an insurance and risk program maybe 10 years prior, and they'd gotten some people that were involved with the Big I or the life underwriters, like my dad, to be on their little advisory board. So,
Yep.
but he was feeding the chairperson of the program, and they were hawks. They were all over me, and so I finally like acquiesced, and I did an internship, I think, after my sophomore year in college, and I made like, 14, $15 an hour in 1994 maybe. And my friends were pushing lawnmowers and painting houses, and I thought, all right, this is all right. I can
Yeah,
do
this
this.
isn't so bad.
But probably the thing that for me, a career trajectory wise, is I got really fortunate, and I think it was 1995 or 96. I was able to be one of the 12 students in the country selected by RIMS to participate at the National RIMS conference.
Yeah.
And so they brought all these kids, from like the College of Insurance and these other and Temple in Philadelphia, who had programs for years, and I got to go. And all I remember about Toronto in I think 1996, I don't remember, was that I think we met with a very young Pat Gallagher. We met with Alexander
Mm.
and Alexander's CEO, and then we got invited to the Marsh Hospitality Suite. And I thought to myself, wait a second, like there's like a sales job, and you can go to
Wait a sec.
hospitality suites and make a lot of money selling insurance. This is what I want to do
Yeah.
because
They
most
knew
of the
what they were
kids
doing.
Indiana
Yeah.
State, they went into underwriting and claims and that sort of thing because we were kind of sponsored by a lot of the mutual insurance companies. So anyway, that just kind of took off. I went to Aon selling benefits right out of college, and Willis and Phoenix a few years later, and then came to Gibson about 19 years ago.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I appreciate that. I think it is good to give people context. Sometimes, it's easy for folks to kind of see you where you're at and not realize, how you got there, which is fun to hear everybody's story. Everybody gets into the industry differently. But we all end up in an industry that we love and love what we do. And it's a really an industry that's a well-kept secret, unfortunately. We'd like it to not be, but
Unfortunately, it still is. I agree with you, and I think I've always felt this way too. Like if you've got a work ethic and at least maybe B minus talent, it's an industry that you can do really really well. And geez, and maybe you got even better than B minus talent or
yeah.
A plus work ethic, and you can really do some great things. But I think our industry still suffers, from a diversity standpoint. And I had somebody kind of tell it to me this way because of most people don't go to school like I did. Most people fall into it, then it's a word of mouth business, and word of
Yeah.
mouth is the people in our own communities, people we see and all that stuff. So we've been really trying hard to connect, really find ways to with women and minorities and so on to help in that regard. And I love it too, because, when you get around people that don't think and act exactly like you did, or you do, or how you grew up, it's a cool thing. So there's so much need, as for talent. I like enough kids don't really think about it,
Well,
as a career option.
it's crazy that, well, and it's something that we've got to continue. I know, like you mentioned, you guys have a podcast. I know a lot of your content does this as well, but it's just, we got to shift the perspective of what we do. I mean, everybody thinks of, the 65-year-old guy that's selling life insurance as our industry, or I'm going to sit behind a, paper apps and filling out applications and stuff. And, there's just, certainly there are those positions in the industry, but it's such a, when you think about the insurance industry, this is what I tell everybody that's I pitch it to, is like, if you can be an accountant, you can be in sales, you can be, really, if you look at any profession, it is in the insurance industry somewhere, which is really cool to think about. Not many industries are that wide ranging, but also you don't find many industries that you're truly doing a really good underlying service for people and businesses. Not everybody looks at it that way in our industry, but certainly if you have the right, you know, perspective, you have empathy, you come at it from the right lens, you're really doing a service to not only those businesses and people, but our economies, our local economies. Everything runs on the backbone of insurance, and you start to connect those dots, and it is a really rewarding industry. Let alone then being able to, you know, make your client whole after a loss. Like the fires going on in California right now is obviously a big
Mm,
headline. It's
yep.
tragic. And who knows how the industry will be able to respond to that. But those are the types of things that, at the end of the day, we are an industry that can make that better and put those people whole. And that is very rewarding. And I wish we could get that message out more, you know?
Elliot, you're so right. When I was at Willis, the CEO at the time, a guy named Joe Clameri, he didn't come from our industry, he came from more financial services, banking, and so on. And he would say, insurance is the DNA of capitalism. And I didn't really understand what that meant, but
Mm,
over the years, I've kind of figured that out now. Like, commerce does not happen without insurance. We
yeah.
guarantee everything. We guarantee, yeah, it's so sad what's going on in California. And yeah, and even my dad would, I always like, what are you doing working still? And I think, my mom always kind of hushes me a little bit because she's glad to get him out of the house
Yeah.
still. But he tells me, he's like, hey, it's like a mission to me still. Like, I find people they really need life insurance, and I can help them, and I can get something
Yeah.
done for them that nobody else can do, and all that stuff. So yeah, it's kind of one of those things we gotta get the word out, because there's a huge talent shortage still.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, and then, to what you were saying, is there's also an opportunity to really excel personally and build companies within the industry. So let's dive into that around Gibson a bit. You guys have obviously, I mean, you've been around a long time, but you've grown the company to 45 million. I'm not sure what the trajectory there was, but I just know from knowing you guys, you've grown pretty significantly over the last couple 10 years or whatnot, that I've seen, or at least what I know. And so talk a little bit about that progression. Is there anything, that you look back on that you guys really saw that change, you really saw growth, that you kind of point to, or any periods that you say, man, we really started to figure it out at this point, or something like that, that you can look back on to point to that growth?
Yeah, Elliot, I'm really grateful for my time at Willis and Phoenix, and the firm WTW is a very different company than what I worked for, 20
I can
plus years
imagine.
ago.
Yeah.
And at the time there in Phoenix, that was probably kind of the crown jewel in Willis's, North American retail, footprint. And I got there, and I'd been pretty successful 2 years out of college at Aon in Indianapolis. But I got there, and my wife had not moved yet. She was in the process of closing everything down in Indy and moving to Phoenix. And I called her on like the second day, and people think I make this up when they know me now, and I did not. I wasn't grandstanding. I said, I think I'm going to get fired. I don't think I could run with these guys. I mean, I already got yelled at by the regional guy. And she's like, "Are you serious? Should we not move?" And I'm like, "No, they're idiots. They're paying me so much money," which it seemed like a lot of money at the time.
Yeah.
And I'm like, "We're gonna live in a vacation city for a year, and no one back in the Midwest has to know that I got fired. We'll just say we missed our family and we came back, after a year." But I'm grateful
That's
to all that
awesome.
because what I learned there is it was a sales machine and a growth oriented machine. And there was no other way to do it but that. So when we did ultimately actually miss family, it's 6 years later and moved back to
So you
the
made it 6 years.
Midwest.
That's good.
She especially missed family.
Yeah.
No, it's been great being back there and got connected. I knew Dave Gibson and came back. Gibson was probably around 10, $11 million at the time and really struggling. And we didn't know it, getting ready to head into the great financial crisis and all that. And so that was one of the first things that I'd given some of what I had just learned and cut my teeth on in this new mindset. And I think what I had to do is kind of remove this false ceiling I had in place of what was humanly possible as
Yeah.
an individual salesperson. And it's amazing, even if you set huge goals, what do? You kind of hit your goals, right? So
Yeah.
they're limiting in some ways that way. But Gibson and I, it took us a couple, probably 2 or 3 years to get used to each other. And I had to tone down some things that I learned at Willis, and but we were able to kind of get moving again, and so I think a lot of times that growth stuff, some simple things by giving people confidence. So we reworked our whole sales process. We really took some time to figure out, talk to clients, what do we do well, and everything, and so we got things moving. And I am definitely a growth vision strategy person. I've really come to know myself better over the last, say, 5 years or so, and I think I've been capable of operating things, but
Hmm.
I do so much better when I'm able to sit fully in that seat. So that took us did pretty well for us for, say, roughly 10 years, say maybe to 2015. And then my personal challenges of not being the world's greatest operator, not being the world's greatest process person, was really starting to hurt us. And we would do lots of great things and get things moving, but inside we needed some work. So that was when we really started focusing on building out our leadership team, kind of the first version of it, and appreciating too that we need to give the operational folks. It's something I had to do a better job at of giving up control and stepping out of the way and letting them put some of that stuff in place. And I think you'd ask like, what are some of those key moments and everything? We've been always willing, very intentional, very focused, very, set a big vision and something that seems impossible to get to. But we've been willing to adapt along the way, whether it's some existential crisis like
Yeah.
pandemic or the great financial crisis or whatever, that we've got to be able to be agile and move and pivot over to something different when it makes sense. So a few years ago, I just kept having this gnawing feeling in my gut. We were doing fine. We had some three really good offices in Indiana. We had one in Southwest Michigan, and we're dealing with, and I think Nebraska is kind of similar. It's I think it's a great place to live. You probably do as well with Nebraska, but it's not the place that loads and loads of people are moving to.
Yeah. Flyover
And there's
state.
right,
Yeah.
not all this organic growth going on. So it felt like we needed to do something bigger. Also, over the years too, I'm a big fan of some of the things Simon Sinek talks about with the infinite game and how
Yeah.
important it is to have worthy rivals that you can learn from. We needed, was worried about our relevancy and remaining relevant, staying relevant for our clients. So we needed to be pushed in a different way. And so I mentioned Larry Linney at the beginning. Larry's been such a huge kind of getting me unstuck, probably two or three different times over the last 15 years or so. So I did what I always do when I'm fully stuck and can't figure it out. Like, Larry, need to talk. So I went to see him in Colorado, and my partners joked that we went up into the mountains, and I don't. Do you smoke peyote? What do you do? Whatever you do with
Yeah.
peyote, but there was no peyote and no.
Ayahuasca or something. Yeah.
But we got together for about 36 hours, and that led to something we call Vision 2033. And so with our employee ownership, we aren't really in a position to do a lot of acquisitions because of the way that the ESOP works. There's a lot of compliance around it, dampens valuation, some of those kind of things. And Larry helped as we worked and worked over the course of a day and a half. He's like, Tim, you guys have gotten really good at opening, new offices. The bankers call it de novo operations. And Elliot, it's tough. It hits cash flow pretty hard when you're hiring producers without the revenue, but you can hand pick the people. And that's what we knew. And we'd gotten better every time we had done it. So that really became this new strategy. Vision 2033 was born. We'll be 100 years old, still trying to catch up with you guys in 2033. And we kind of made it as simple as we want to be operating in 20 markets around the country by 2033 as part of fulfilling that vision. And we know whether we land at 22 offices or 17, what we're learning going through that process and so on is just unbelievable for our team. So we started in Phoenix. My COO and I both had done time there, and we hoped we had a little bit of home court advantage left over. Maybe people would take our calls still. And that led to a Tucson startup, and then it led to a small acquisition in Salt Lake about a year and a half ago. And currently, we're working on building out Chicago. We've got, not a full squad yet. We've got a kicker, a tight end, a linebacker,
There
and,
we
a,
go.
and so on. And so we're filling out. We've got some great people there, and all that. And so it's been a ton of fun too. I've been able to be out on the front end of, the recruiting and everything, and thoroughly enjoying myself.
Yeah. That's great. And I know this from talking to your Salt Lake head of your Salt Lake office, Taylor. And this is what's cool when you've got a cohesive vision and strategies. He said the exact same thing that you did.
Is
And
that right?
I didn't know, we were going to have
Wow.
this conversation at the time. So that's kind of cool, that he's shooting for the same mission. And I would encourage anybody out there that's in a leadership position, that's your goal with vision planning. We call it a vivid vision. You want to make it as vivid as possible so that everybody can describe it in clear terms, which means everybody's going to work every day to achieve the same thing, which is really
Well,
cool.
Elliot, I know you're the MC here, but if I could
Yeah.
turn this around and ask you a question or so, I think you guys are so intentional about what you're doing. So you maybe don't always get a chance to share your story here, but how have you and your brother and so on kind of made the vision come alive at your organization?
Yeah, I think it's a great question. First off, I think you got to spend the time really asking yourself, like, who are you today? What matters to you? What values to you? And then who do you want to become? We knew that our big why, our big belief is helping locally owned, community held businesses perpetuate to the next generation or to, whatever the next stage of their business is. That means we had to become more of that advisor, that business consultant. We're going to have to evolve and transform into that. And so our vision is all predicated on being able to help 10,000 of those businesses do exactly that. And so we've got it down to, we started this process in 2020. And so we had a 2030 vision, which was going to be to 10x the company. At that point, it was kind of based on revenue. We've now gotten it to really down to that why, which is the individual business. And what does that mean to successfully help them? And what does it mean to, help them perpetuate? Well, some businesses that might be 30 years down the road. So how do we know we're doing the right things today to help them do that? So really, we focused a lot on that. And you referenced one thing in there that really hit me too and influenced a lot of this, which was The Infinite Game by Simon Sinek. I would encourage everybody to read that. One of the biggest things that I think we took out of that was that the business should live longer than all of us. And naturally, we all have a finite lifespan, right? So we make decisions, whether we know it or not, in a finite period of time. And what that helped me realize is that we need to completely rethink that. And so we tried to think big and say, okay, what's the next 50 years look like? What's the next 100? We're not trying to describe, we're not trying to really, but we're trying to make decisions that are not based on my livelihood or not based on me retiring or anything like that. It's based on how are we going to be able to send this to the next generation and the next generation after that and whatnot. And so we're getting very intentional with those things, but I could keep going on
I
forever,
love
I guess,
that.
but
I think you're so right on that. And I feel so fortunate with people like Dave and Greg. They could have made a lot of other decisions about Gibson, and they chose to, maybe Sinek's book wasn't out at the time, but
yeah.
they were living that infinite game the way they designed this and the way they set it up. And I had a big health scare about a year ago, and our COO and then David, our newly named president, did a great job while I was out, of keeping the ship afloat, and not just doing that, but running it, doing well. And as we got back together and everything, um, it was really cool to hear him. But I also, I turned 50 right about that same time too, and I got a lot of runway ahead. But David's like, "Hey Tim, I got to tell you, man, I was. You can ask my wife. I think I cried the day I heard that. I thought you were going to be in real trouble, and maybe again the day when I heard you were going to be okay." And then he said, and then I got to tell you though, like I kind of like sitting in the saddle, and
Yeah.
I don't want to fully go back. And I don't know if you ever know exactly when the right time is to do some of those things, but I knew that was the message to me of the timing was right to get this thing moving along. And so David and I got to have dinner with Greg and Dave and their spouses a couple of months ago too, which was so cool to kind of see all that come together. And it's because of what you just said. It's not about me. It's bigger than me, and I'm not going anywhere either. But
Yeah.
to do it right, you've got to start bringing along that next generation and teaching them and training them and giving those real life experiences to sit in the saddle, make the tough decisions. Sometimes you get it right, sometimes you don't. And maybe there's some big guardrails there, but I'm not going to screw it up. And to be able to provide some of those same things to David and that next generation, it's super rewarding to do that and to see a business continue. I mean, you think about like you guys again. I know you're almost 120 years old. What things in America exist that are
Yeah.
100 years old? There's just not that many out there.
Well,
So,
and you're
so to
seeing
be a
it.
part of something is pretty cool.
It's really cool, and you're seeing it now in our industry with just all the consolidation, and it just I understand it, I get it, and I'm never gonna cast stones at anybody, but we feel very fortunate in, my family didn't start it, but my dad became the majority shareholder, and he's had a deep passion for remaining independent. That's kind of a mantra that we have. So we have no interest in selling. We have no interest in, becoming a national firm or anything like that. We're going to continue to grow organically and bring on the right partners that help. Again, we want to send this to the next generation. And so feel very fortunate that we had that case, but it wasn't set up that way necessarily. We were set up very much like the old school, bring on producers, they have their books of business, everybody kind of does their own thing. And in order to go and be able to, it's one thing we realized, if we're going to be able to send this thing to the next generation, we've got to create a business out of it, not create a bunch of books of business that, are all kind of doing different things. And we've spent the better part of probably the last 10 years really working on how do we bring that all together, which, is tough. There's a lot of people issues that go into that. There's a lot of, process, there's a lot of
Right.
strategy, all of those things. But ultimately, it's with that end goal in mind, that our vivid vision to say, we know we never want to get to a point where we feel stuck and then our only option is to sell. Because I know that that's
Right.
what happens to a lot of firms is they're like, man, I'd love to have 6 people I can buy me out and whatever, but they didn't plan for it, or they made a couple mistakes or didn't think about it. And, now they're going to sell. And so it's
Yeah,
getting very
that takes
intentional with what
such
we're doing.
intentional work and planning to stay ahead of the game on all that. And you had asked a little bit about some things that have been good for us from a growth standpoint. So I'm an idea person and I like launching things, and we tend to my COO says we move at the speed of Gibson, which a lot of
Yeah.
times is the speed of Tim.
Yeah.
And I'll leave one of our EOS L10 meetings, and I got assigned a rock or something, and I'm making calls and sending texts and getting people working on my project like
Yeah.
before I even get to my desk. So a couple of things that have been important on the big picture side of things. So this might be, again, for some of the agencies that are thinking about growing or expanding. So it's that leadership group. As we've gone into new markets, when we first started doing this, we were trying to stay, say 150 miles or less away
Yeah. So you get there and
from South Bend, because you can always get in the car and go solve a problem and fix something if you need to.
yep.
And that's been strained and stressed being 1,500 miles away now in different time zones. But we've often just relied on a lot of the classic stuff, and it works. We try to find some friends of the program in one of these cities that we want to go into, that we know, that knows us, that wants to see us win. In our later years here, we've actually formalized that by creating some marketplace board of advisors. Stole the idea
Mm,
from a former bank board that I used to be a part of. They would kind of have these small boards in all the communities they worked in.
that's
And you
cool.
know what? At the end of the day, it was kind of a prospecting session
Yeah.
for the local
Yeah.
office. But a couple of clients were on there. I'd see people, I'd get stuff out of it and show up once a quarter. And so we've kind of tried to mirror that and get them engaged with our local team. So that's had a lot of value, helping a local market leader get
That's cool.
established, credibility, I'd say, all those things. So we've tried things like that. We love putting on a big event when we get going, as well. And oftentimes it's not insurance related per se, but the way that I think you guys operate and we do, it's so much more than insurance anyway. So
Yeah.
right, a lot of our clients are suffering from leadership issues or
Yep.
process issues or other things versus that their coverage is so wrong.
Yeah.
So we'll partner. And I think like in Phoenix, we got to know the president of Colby, which you guys may use that for
Yep.
personality assessments. And so well, Larry had just put out his new management book a few years ago at the time, and we had Larry was the undercard, and we had the president of Colby, Amy Brusky, speak. And we must have had our board of advisors helped us invite people. We had like 50 decision makers come, and
Wow.
we didn't have any brand in that market whatsoever, and that was really helpful to get things just moving, connected, and so on. And it wasn't about insurance; it was about something that everybody might have an interest in learning more, about themselves. So we do a lot of things like that. We've always been really involved with our communities, and we're nice people and we care about our communities. But I think like you too, it's this symbiotic relationship with the organization. So we try to get involved and get deep with a few key not-for-profits to get those going, and be involved and get the table, but also don't waste the table on
Yeah.
your pals, necessarily. Let's invite key people that we can integrate in.
That's a
And
great
then
idea.
we've also really leaned into uh, a lot of the carrier people in those markets too, because like you, I think we're kind of in a Goldilocks position for a lot of these folks. We're not too big, not too small, and we're kind of a just right. And I think they want to see us win, and not to the detriment of their other partners, but there are opportunities for them to help. And so we ask to be pointed in the right direction on that stuff as well. So those are the kind of things I think at the corporate level that have been really helpful and useful to us. Um, at the individual side, on the producer end of things, um, Elliot, I've been always been really involved with recruiting, and I probably started over the years when I shifted out of personally selling and have a book of business. I'm a sales jockey at my core, and I love people, and I'm naturally enthusiastic about what I'm doing. I'm a galvanizer, and I have this need to like bring people along
Mhm.
with me anyway. I want all my
Yeah.
friends to come experience what I'm experiencing.
Oh God. Yeah.
So
I hear
Gibson,
you
I
there.
think, right? We finally kind of got me in a better space in the last 5 years, and I truly spend most of my time out tip of the spear, and I do a lot of recruiting personally too. So it's how we compete against the large nationals that have their story to tell, and we've got our story. So, on a Sunday evening, I'll spend time messaging on LinkedIn, and I often do get this, is this a bot type of thing
Yeah.
back. So I usually will say something unique that they know I'm not a bot. And yeah, the CEO is messaging you on a Sunday evening, and I'm going to be in your city in a couple of weeks, and I was told you're somebody I should know.
Yeah.
And a lot of times I get those leads from carrier people and industry people. I ask a whole bunch of them, and I kind of build the quilt, the
Yeah.
mosaic after hearing all that, and three or four names continually pop up. Sometimes it's the people they know are disgruntled that are leaving soon. Sometimes it's the up and comer that's being held back, and I just say, hey, I'm going to be there. Do you want to grab coffee or lunch or something like that? And they're usually like really curious. So it's like, well, I love what I'm doing, but
Yeah.
okay. I mean, I'll listen to you, but I'm not going to do anything. And we
Yep.
get started that way, and those have led to a lot of our success. we're really intentional about a process, and we started probably 15 years ago, really diving in. We use two assessments. Every employee in Gibson, we use Colby and then we use something called Sales Drive, which is pretty
Mm.
nuanced and niche, and just for salespeople. And it helps us find the right fix and or the right mix, I should say, and fit for Gibson. And we've kept that data now over the years for at least 15 years now of all of our own producers, people that were successful or not. And so we've got a really good um, foundation to know when somebody scores a certain way, here's what they're going to need to be successful. But the final piece to really getting it right, Elliot, was again, a lot of these things involve getting me out, not involved with it. And I found, I do better when I'm in the cheerleader role, but I can also be, scrutinized heavily. But unfortunately, I was involved on the front end and the back end. And of course, salespeople interview pretty well, or they
Yeah.
probably shouldn't be in sales. And I love talking to them, and I get all excited, and then I'm kind of pushing for us to hire them on the back end too. And so over the last, say, 3 or 4 years, we removed me. We realized I needed to be on just one part in the process. I like the front end better anyway.
Yeah.
And so we took that. And it's not that I won't still sit there with my team and maybe David scrutinizing and saying, yeah, I don't know. And I will insert myself to say, are you seeing the angle though? Here's the angle I'm seeing, and making sure we're looking at that. But I do not make the final call on these. And it's gone so much better
Yeah.
since we got that in place and we got all the data, and we're very formal on how we do it. And I think the candidates get a better experience as well. So all of that stuff costs about all of $0 too. So
Yeah.
like some of the I know like the agencies that follow you guys in your podcast might think, oh man, I don't have the budget, I don't have a full-time recruiter, I don't have all these things. We didn't put a lot into that either. It's kind of, sweat equity, I think, when
Yeah.
we're doing it.
Yeah. It's so funny. There's so many correlations there. I have had to realize over the years, feel like I'm similar to you in that I'm always finding the angle with somebody. Like I can recruit them, but I had to be 100% out of the interview process. Like I can be in one or two, but what I've realized is I'm always going to find the angle of like, this can work because of this. And, I always see that in the person regardless. And yet that doesn't always mean that they're going to be a good fit in the role.
Yep.
And if I look back on several people that we've missed on, I'm like, I probably should have had somebody else that was like the yin and
Yes.
the yang. And so we pretty much pull me out pretty early of the interview process in those, which is fine. I know my strengths and weaknesses, but that took a while to figure out for sure. Um, but that's what's fun. You do have to. I feel like one of the most important things you can do in building a business, maybe the most important, is the people you bring onto the team. And it's really easy to go out and try to hire, successful people and whatnot, but you have to get much more strategic with that and think what's the holes you have to fill, what weaknesses are you trying to improve upon, and bring the people onto the team that can do that. Too often, even if we're promoting internally, we think like this is a high performer, so we're going to promote them to a management position or a team leader when they don't have the skill set to be the managers. If it's a much different position, we have to have that conversation with them and show them their path and their vision. But that doesn't necessarily mean that that's where they need to go.
That's right. And Elliot, we talk to people about that. The most important criteria for us is, again, flip over the back of the baseball card. What are the stats? Like, so, actual results matter the most. And as much as we love these assessments, I don't think they're an end all and they're the only thing. But what they've taught me, what I've learned from Amy Brusky at Colby, is they're about how somebody naturally operates though, and that they're going to be in their
Yeah.
zone most often. And I think anybody can be successful at anything they put their mind into doing. And we have a few people that are like our very best salespeople that don't profile in terms of our normal Cinderella's glass slipper that fits exactly perfectly.
Yep.
And that's okay. There's other reasons that they are able to do it. But we try to help people like that. Of We want you to be in a kind of in a natural zone, because that's where you're going to really experience when you get to play to your strengths every day. You're going to do great things,
Yep.
whatever it is you're doing.
Couldn't agree more. Couldn't agree more. Um, so I'm sure we could keep going all day, Tim, on a lot of this. I feel like we've scratched the surface, but I do want to make sure folks know about your podcast and what all the content you guys are putting out. How can they kind of learn more about some of that side of it so they can pick up on what you guys are doing?
Yeah, sure. Our podcast is called The Edge, and we're on Spotify and all the other spots as well. Like you all, and that's really our we call it our just cause, is to help our clients, our employees find their edge and own it. Also because I'm the least. Don't come to me for an insurance question. There's a lot of other, even though I somehow got that bachelor's degree in insurance,
Yeah.
there's a lot of smarter people. I love leadership. I love people. I love teams. I love putting people together. So when we started our podcast up probably around the pandemic, I agreed that I would enjoy hosting it and do that with one caveat, and that was we were going to talk about, and really again, yours isn't about insurance either. I wanted to talk about people, teams, leadership, and all that. So we interview people and leaders especially, and ask them about their leadership journey and the best teams they've been on, and stuff like that. So I appreciate the shout out on that, and like you all too, we love to see people do well and take an abundant approach to things. So if it's useful or helpful to our clients or other insurance agencies out there, hey, that's great.
Yep. Yep. The rising tide raises all ships, right?
You got it.
Awesome. Well, and then I'm sure folks can find you on LinkedIn, all the
Yeah, I'm
major
I'm pretty
spots.
active out there, as you said. Yeah,
Jumping
you
into
can
the
check
cold
the cold
water and all
plunge.
the things. Yeah. Awesome. Well, hey, I appreciate the time. I know you're busy, and I think everybody's gonna take a lot out of this. So hope we can maybe do it again soon.
You got it, Elliot. Thanks so much for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yep. Thanks, Tim.
Good luck. Thanks.